Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. I am the GM Philosopher and today we're talking about how to manage D&D gold and currency. This video was inspired by a question I got on my channel and I need to give a shout out to Coco Leaf Porter 6571 for requesting this video. Awesome video idea. Coco Leaf, great question here. Can you go over how you deal with gold currency? Do you go by the book? How do you rationalize how much gold, silver, copper pieces things cost when all you've ever had to math out was USD, lol, or whatever currency everyone has grown up using in real life? So this is a super great question. Thank you so much, Coco Leaf Porter, for asking this. And I'm just gonna dive right into it. But before I do, I want to just say a couple things. Number one, if you have an answer, I would love to hear you drop it in the comments. How do you handle gold and silver? How do you handle pricing in your D&D games? I'd love to hear your commentary on this. I'd love to hear your insight. Please drop those comments. And number two, if you have a video request that you would like me to cover, please drop it in the comments. I love to answer questions in my videos. And partly the reason why I love to do this is because I want to create videos that matter, that are on topics that people are actually thinking about, wondering about, and I just like to give my little 2 cents here on my little channel. And if you would also give me a thumbs up and a subscribe, that would help me so much. I am like a humble fantasy merchant trying to grow my little profitable empire. I am hoping to go from 2,000 subs, which I recently hit, thanks to all of you awesome people, up to 5,000 subs. I am trying to climb the ladder of YouTube fantasy awesomeness to get to 5,000 subs. And if you would help me by giving me a thumbs up and a subscribe, it helps show my videos to more people and helps my little channel to grow. So thank you so much. With that being said, let's dive into this. First of all, I'm going to give you a disclaimer. My method of doing this is actually very straightforward. It's not super special. And a lot of you have probably done it exactly like this. Basically, here's what I do. When it comes to gold and currency, first of all, I let players track their own gold and currency. I've been doing this for years. There was a point in time where I did try to kind of like double track everyone's gold and silver. And the idea was I wanted to make sure that the illusion of reality was maintained, proper immersion. I wanted to make sure people weren't just like willy-nilly spending 3 times as much gold as they have, either by clerical error or from mistake or from just forgetting to write things down accurately. Personally, at my table, I've really never experienced what I would call a validated like case of someone cheating on their gold and silver. I've had players, more than anything, I've just had them lose track. So if they were cheating, they were super good and got away with it. I have had people cheat with dice rolls before, and I had to have a conversation with them. That's an interesting story, maybe for another video, but I've never ever experienced anything like this. So I'm not really worried about it. I trust my players and I just give them the gold. It's like, you found this much gold, boom, write it on your sheet, and I trust them to track it. And a lot of times I find that this keeps things pretty well organized. With that being said, the pricing for things. Okay. So I use 2 methods for this. Number one, I go by the book. I really do. I go in the player's handbook and I look at the store pricing, and that is my primary resource for this. Sometimes on my laptop, I will have ChatGPT up and I'll ask it, how much do you think so-and-so costs in D&D 5e gold and silver pricing? And then it'll give me a number. Sometimes it's like really off. Sometimes it's kind of like accurate. So a lot of times I'll just kind of take it and I'll just like factor it myself. Sometimes just based on my knowledge of what something would cost, I'll just try to figure out, okay, well, what would be a common sense price for that? Okay. One really interesting thing I like to think about are like typical D&D wages. Okay, so if you think about it, and this is actually kind of a wild thing, the lowest level servants, we're talking about kitchen servants on up to even sailors and that kind of thing, their daily wages are anywhere from 1 to 5 copper pieces. Okay, so if you think about in terms of like, okay, that's sort of like minimum wage. How does that factor out? We're looking at like a copper piece factors out to, or 5 copper pieces factors out to being about what a person might make in minimum wage, right? So that's like minimum wage in D&D terms, okay? So if something is going to cost 1 to 5 silver pieces, you're kind of looking at like, it's going to cost basically a day's worth of wages, okay? Now, laborers though, and we're talking about, masons, carpenters, armorers, apprentices, and such, the price for labor really goes up. It goes up to anywhere from 3 silver on up to 5 silver per day, right? And then you have like military people, constables are making like a silver piece a day. Infantry are making 2 silver pieces. Archers are making 3 silver pieces a day, right? So then you go on up to full-fledged armorers. They're making like 1 gold a day, right? Huntsmen, keepers of the king's forest, they're making 2 gold a day. A master huntsman is earning about 5 a day. A squire is earning about 10 gold per day. Okay. And then, of course, you go on up and you go up to like prince or princess, 500 gold a day, king or queen, 50,000 gold a day, right? So when we look at these things, and a knight, about 15 gold pieces per day. I'm just looking this up on the D&D wiki under D&D wages. So obviously there could be some wiggle room here, but this sounds pretty accurate to me. So when we like knowing this, and I actually use this type of thing a lot to try to just off the cuff figure out what something might cost. So for example, the other day, one of my players went to basically, they had stolen like this this diamond bedazzled brassiere from a high class aristocratic artisan, also psychopathic, sort of like politician wizard that he slept with. And she left her brassiere in his tent, and it was on purpose. She was like, little gift for you, with a wink. I won't miss it. I probably won't even wear it a second time, but it was bedazzled with real diamonds. And so he was like, oh my God. So he goes to a fence to sell it. And, they were trying to haggle on the price. And what they ended up settling on was this. Now, keep in mind that this was a fence. So there was going to be sort of like a dip in wages because the fence was going to have to find a way to clear it and sell it legally. There was some fear that she might come back on the group because she was a little bit of a malicious, psychopathic person, as it turned out. So they were a little afraid of her tracking them through it. So that's why they went to a fence, even though it wasn't technically stolen. But they all made some rolls to try to figure out what the value might be. And they came up with anything from 1,000 to 5,000 gold pieces worth of diamonds on this thing. So they were like, okay, well, what are we going to do with this? So they take it to a fence. And the first offense is like trying to trade them some like kind of like smaller magic items, and the fence is also trying to like kind of undercut them. And after quite a bit of haggling, they settled on 700 pieces of gold and 1 scroll of identify. That's what the fence traded for the brazier. So basically, what does that equal out to? Well, for a squire, that literally comes out to 70 days of labor, right? But these were big diamonds, a lot of them. Gems are worth a lot. This was basically a piece of jewelry that could finance a whole expedition, right? So it was like very expensive. So there's a question of like, well, okay, GM Philosopher, how did you come up with that number? Did you just pull that out of your butt or what? Okay, well, when we go and we look up how much some gems are worth in D&D, according to like the player's handbook and even the dungeon master's guide, then we find that gems can be worth anywhere from 10 gold pieces on up to thousands of gold pieces. Okay. So it's like, okay, well, what are these gems worth? These were kind of smaller gems. So it's like, okay, a bunch of smaller gems worth, value adding up to roughly somewhere around 1,000, maybe more. But because the fence was going to sell for less, they were going to make a lower offer. I always try to role play at common sense when we're role playing haggling. My group actually role plays a lot of haggling, and they make a lot of persuasion checks and stuff to try to haggle people down. And that's a role play thing that some of my players really enjoy. And so it's really fun to like haggle. They also haggled with like this wholesale ship equipment dealer to try to, they're actually getting ready to go on a voyage. They're going on a 4,000-mile voyage with their 2 ships. So they have 2 crews. So they had to like buy food and supplies, and they also had to figure in wages for their sailors. And so we did all the math. Now I did all the math on that, and I gave them the bid, and then they went and they like haggled it down. And the reason I did the math on it was because they had one of the NPCs do the math, and he actually was a pretty good mathematician. He's trying to learn how to be like a first mate. So he's like a first mate in training who came with them on their adventure. So he's like doing this math and stuff. And so I rolled to see how accurate he was. Then they went and they kind of haggled. They got the price down. Little side note, one of the PCs has a necklace that allows him to breathe underwater, and he has a trident that like controls fish. So he's actually going to do a bunch of fishing and move fish into their fishing net, and he's going to actually be able to cut. We did the math, and if he fishes every day, they can cut their costs by 25%. So they also did that. This is really funny. But anyway, so they're just trying to get the bottom dollar for their expedition, and that's what they came up with. So here's the thing is that when it comes to gold pieces and the like, I just try to think about what the daily expenditures are and then how much people can afford. For example, a count or a countess can earn their daily earnings are about 50 gold pieces. Taking this into account, that's about the level probably that this arcane wizard aristocrat politician was at. She was at probably 50 gold piece level of income. So it's not so crazy to think that she would have a fancy brassiere worth 1,000 gold. And it's also true based on the fact that she was a bit of a psychopath. And this really emerged. Like she really did some crazy things. And she kind of just like, while they were hanging out with her, she became kind of a problem. And part of the problem is that she was so powerful that no one could really say anything to her because she was a very high level wizard. So, this kind of was a thing where she probably makes a lot more money just by stealing things from people or whatever. She probably bullies people into giving her more money and things. And then another issue is that why would she leave this behind? Maybe she was flaunting, maybe whatever. But the fact of the matter is, when you do the math, I felt pretty good about that valuation. How did I make that valuation? I just sort of common sensed it. And these are really the two resources that I use the most. Is I use the prices in D&D books. I really do. I try to follow them very closely, and I try to rationalize my prices with those. And even if I'm dealing with something that isn't exactly in the books, I do try to find kind of things in the books that would be of similar value and kind of like weigh them against each other. And I try to use the D&D wages. Like, there's all kinds of these tables online, but I try to find one that I think is consistent and that works well. And then I kind of think like, okay, well, what is a wages? What's the cost of a day's worth of wages in this sort of category? And that also helps to put values on things. So that's really what I do. And it's not super fancy, but for me, I think it works pretty good. And sometimes it's probably a little off. Sometimes my players probably get way better prices on things than maybe they should because I just shoot a number out there based on my estimation that maybe is undershooting the actual price, because my players know enough about the prices that they know better than to take my overshoots for pricing, but they know to take my undershoots. So it's just kind of how it factors out. They get good deals sometimes. But anyway, all right, there you have it. That's pretty much everything I've got to say about this. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Drop your comments. Let me know what you think about this. And that's going to be it for this one. Have a great day, everyone. I will see you on the next video.